Hey, good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Emmy.
Morning, Cody. Morning, Amar. How are you guys doing?
I am doing extremely well. Excited to talk with you both.
Awesome. Well, we are very glad to have you here. I'm going to jump out with the first question, which is like, in your best 2 minutes, give us a little bit of your backstory, like how you got to, well, what you're doing right now, how you got there, and we'll kind of just riff on it from there.
No problem. I'll make this my 2 minute drill. So I'll kind of do my Tom Brady, even though I'm a Jets fan, impersonation for you. So I have, my name is Amar Shah. I've been a writer, producer, and entrepreneur for the last 20 years in the world of sports. So the kind of like the intersection of storytelling and innovation, I like to say. I've really been lucky enough to work at places like ESPN, the NFL, and the Orlando Magic. Recently, I have switched over to the world of publishing. I've become a published novelist with Scholastic. I've done a basketball series called Play the Game, and I have an upcoming graphic novel memoir called Wish I Was a Baller, which was about my 1990 years covering the NBA, being friends with Shaq and being on the cover of Sports Illustrated for Kids. So really excited about that. And then I also recently started an agency consultancy called West Egg Ventures, where we specialize working with leagues and startups on their content strategy and digital experiences. And I'm lucky enough that I went to the University of Florida and I get a chance to be an adjunct professor there. And I teach a course on sports media and entrepreneurship, and I get a chance to mentor students like I was. And so that's just a little bit of a part of what I've done on the career side. And
You've got fingers in so many different areas, which is so cool. I see over your shoulder, that's the book that's coming out soon.
that is the book. It's called Wish I Was a Baller. It's a graphic novel. Illustrations done by the amazing Rashad Duquette, and it's everything is it's illustrated. It'll be out with Scholastic, and yeah, and then you'll be able to see in the back matter some cool photos of me and Shaq back in the day. But yeah, so excited about that. That was a 10-year project that's seeing all that work come into fruition now. So I'm super excited about that, and it's about me. So all these kids and all these adults are going to live their 90s years, and their kids are going to be able to relive vicariously through them too.
Is that so? The story that's in your book, right? It's about you, it's about your experiences and journey. Was that kind of your first, I love this world of sports? Was that your inspiration, or was there like a pivotal moment that kicked it off and you're like, this memory, this experience, oh my God, I need more of this?
Oh yeah, the inciting incident, if you will, was when where it all started. I lived in obviously I grew up in Orlando, and during the mid '90s, our high school hosted, ironically, all the different teams that were playing the Orlando Magic. The teams would practice in our gym. So it was May of 1995, and this is where the book kind of kickstarts itself, where we're in the gym, we're in the cafeteria in the ninth grade center, studying for a math test. I know I was going to fail with my friends around, and all of a sudden, like, these kids burst through the door saying the Chicago Bulls are in the gym. And so it was the case that it was the game where Michael Jordan switched his 45 to 23 jersey. And so Jordan, Pippen, BJ Armstrong, Phil Jackson were all in our high school gym. And, I, being an intrepid wannabe reporter, went to my, got a fake, like, not a fake, I got a signed press pass from my journalism teacher, and ended up getting into the gym and was wearing a New York Knicks sweatshirt that Phil Jackson somehow made fun of. And that was the incident that kickstarted my entire sort of journalism career, which is somewhat 30 years ago. But, once you go through that excitement, I don't think anything else will keep you can't do anything else.
Yeah, especially at that age and that moment in time, that's awesome to be able to have access as a kid to that team. It's just so iconic.
Yeah, I mean, what the appetite to pursue, professional journalism or sports journalism, and I made me want to get a press pass to an NBA game. I got denied for the playoffs and for the finals when they played the Magic played the Rockets. But I kept going at it, kept faxing the Orlando Magic, and finally I bugged them enough that they granted me a press pass my sophomore year, and got a chance to go to a Miami Heat game, and went to the Magic locker room, and lo and behold, there's Shaq. Ended up getting a one-on-one interview with him right before he got hurt, and that was what kind of jump-started, again, accelerated my journalism career, and I don't think I've ever looked back.
That's awesome. So did that storytelling start then, or was this more still journalism? When did you make that switch to more of this longer form?
Well, I've always wanted to be like a novelist since I was like in fifth or sixth grade, right? But that dream kind of kept getting postponed. One, because of lack of discipline, and two, you got to make a living, and then life also takes over. But I studied journalism at the University of Florida, got my first job working as a production assistant on SportsCenter. So I was able to dabble in multiple forms of storytelling. whether it was on the TV production side, whether it was on the print side, or whether it was on like the new media side. So all those different skill sets were things that I continued to learn. But the biggest thing is, what is the story you're trying to tell? And it didn't matter whether it was on social media or it was a long form documentary. I thought that having experience in all of those things helped me, better be a creator. And I was lucky enough that, like last year, I became a published novelist and I started writing books when, later and after my kids were born. And sometimes you can accomplish your dreams, but they just may be a little bit more delayed or may happen at a different time. And I think that's an important thing as you get older, is that you will accomplish the things you want to do, but they won't necessarily go in the order that you thought they would.
Yeah. I mean, so you've been in this storytelling journalism space for most of your life, really. What have you seen as the biggest evolutions or changes? Because like we think about the landscape now is so fragmented. There's just so much content out there. What's the good and the bad that you've seen change over the years?
Well, I think, it's incredible. I was just thinking the other day that I used to run sports content for MySpace, right? So I back in the social media game before, like, it was just in its nascent phases. But just on the social media side, how that has taken over. Like, there are jobs that exist now that never were even thought about when I was sort of graduating from school, or even, 10 years ago. And I think the way sports media, the landscape is changing, is that there's been a democratization of ability to create your own thing, start your own thing, and you don't have to necessarily wait to be a gatekeeper, where a lot of people have an opportunity to kind of put their imprint on things. And I think that's super awesome. At the same time, things have gotten diluted now, where, real journalism and talking heads, that world has become intermingled. So there is the journalist side of me that is like, wow, we need to go back to the basics of like writing and reporting instead of like, constantly talking about our opinion. But you also have to understand that's where the media landscape is right now. But I think for me specifically, what's really been great is long form documentary filmmaking has been hot ever since like The Last Dance came out. Social media content. I mean, teams are turning into their own media companies, and people are getting started creating, riches in the niches as far as, content. It's whether it's like in the sports NIL space, whether it's, in sports betting, whether it's, on, players creating their own media companies. There's just so much opportunity out there. And I think you have an ability to find the right niche if you have, the right viewpoint on things.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a little bit of where we're coming from with Win-Win, right? Is taking that niche of the intersection of sports and social impact, and the stories that are there. I mean, there are so many of them. It's just they're not getting the visibility or not being told in the way that I think is necessarily consumable for the folks out there who would be so interested in hearing this background on their favorite players, their, teams, leagues. I guess with your background in this, where do you see us being able to take these stories, and how do we make them mainstream? How do we weave them into the fabric of sports so that it's not like look what this athlete is doing, but it's just part of that story?
I think with what I love about Win-Win and why I'm so excited about with what you all are doing and kind of being part of it is because it is an area that just hasn't seen the proper light. And now, social impact is becoming not just a buzzword, but it's something that people are actually putting into focus. I mean, one example was yesterday, I was just watching a documentary made about a women's flag football that was produced by the Atlanta Falcons. And
Amazing.
I think there's just so many areas where these kind of stories need to be highlighted. And it's not just like, oh, this player, created this charity and, we need to do a story about that. But it's also how are, real life, human beings being affected by these things that people are doing. And I think it's important to shed a light, because you show one person how one person did it, it's going to inspire the next person to do something bigger.
I think the thing that we're getting really excited about, Amar, that really touches on what you're saying, is that they're under leveraged, these stories, and with so many teams, leagues, and even sports emerging right now, the new sports that are professionalizing and becoming forms of entertainment, everyone's fighting for fandom. And we really look at this as a way to build fandom and differentiate the types of ways in which people are connecting with their community, because it isn't just about that athlete or that team started this organization, started this foundation, but those things have impact in that community. And those stories aren't being leveraged in a way that also have business objectives. And that's okay. That's the win-win.
I mean, I think, actually, the thing that made me a sports fan, was my, it's a very, very familiar, very family affair, right? My dad came to this country in 1968 as an Indian student immigrant, and he came at the best time to be a New York sports fan in the late 60s with like Tom Seaver and Joe Namath and Walt Frazier, and so he became a Jets, Knicks, Rangers, fan, and so I fortunately got the worst of it because the only championship I've seen is the '94 Rangers. Because being a Knicks, Mets, Jets, Rangers fan is it teaches you character, teaches you know how to how to overcome suffering. But the great thing is I'm a Florida Gator, and it allowed me to watch the game with my son this past year, and we won a championship, and it was cool to kind of celebrate with him to show what winning really feels like. So that was like the beauty of like the father and son dynamic.
That's awesome. It's a good time to be a Gator.
It is. Hopefully our football team will be great too. 3 championships for each of these football teams and basketball teams. It hasn't been done by anybody else. So yeah, go Gators.
Well, thank you so much, Amar, for chatting with us.
And Amy and Cody, I really appreciate it. This is awesome.
We're thrilled to have you part of Win-Win on the advisory board, and just looking forward to so much good stuff coming in the future.
Same here. This thing is going to be awesome, and I'm looking forward to see what you all do.